Good evening. I know the screen says sermon. Sorry, that's not what this is going to be. This is a presentation about our work. But now that we live here, it's kind of deceptive. We're here every week in, week out, and yet we're still missionaries supported by this church. And so I talked to the elders and said, could I still give a report about our work, at least maybe once a year or something? So this is our annual report about the work that we do, that you do together with us, because you partner with us in this work. So if you're here and you're a dad, happy Father's Day. If you're here with your dad, good job. You knew what dad wants most for Father's Day is a report about mission work. So good job. All right. See, are we ready, Jared? Yeah, there we go. All right. So start with our family, even though this part is less necessary than usual because you're getting to know us better all the time we're spending here. These are some of my biggest blessings. Denise, my wife, and then the children God's blessed us with. Malachi is here with us tonight. He's not always here, but he lives here in the area. He recently finished the AIM program, graduated in March. And now he's working full time and getting ready to be an AIM staff member starting this fall. Meanwhile, Silas, our second born, he just graduated high school. He's planning to go to AIM as a student this fall. He's raising his support for that. He's at Camp Blue Haven right now, actually. And then everybody else is here with us: Ezra, Eden, Asa, Cephas, Zadok, and Boaz. I didn't label them up on the screen, but hopefully you're getting to know who's who there. All right, so that's us. I wanted to go back and I don't always do this when we give a presentation, but kind of go back and give some of the history of our work, not just what we've done the past year, but kind of like what's the big picture, what's the context, so kind of going back to the whole story of our mission work. And along the way, I want to tell a little bit of the story of Shallowater's involvement. Because some of you, especially if you weren't here 15 years ago, you may not know how do we get involved with each other and all that. So we'll go back and kind of go back to the beginning. So 2008 to 2014, our family served as mission workers in Kharkiv, Ukraine. And here's a map of Ukraine and Kharkiv there in the northeast, marked there. And as we've pointed out in the past, you might notice that's really close to the edge of Ukraine. What's right across the border there? That's Russia. It seemed like a minor detail at the time we went there in 2008, became a very major detail in the years since then, Kharkiv's proximity to the Russian border. We went in 2008 as part of a team with two other families initially, and then a fourth family joined us a couple years into it. And we started a church planting work there, planting a congregation in that city. It's the second biggest city in Ukraine, still is, to my knowledge, to this day. Populations have changed a lot with the war, but it's still a very big city. We miss it a lot. A couple of years into that, incidentally, I didn't know this would be that important, but looking back, this was quite interesting. I went and taught in a city called Donetsk. I didn't mark it, but you can see it down there to the south, kind of southeast of Ukraine, Donetsk. In Donetsk, there was a organization called Ukrainian Bible Institute. Now I knew it was there. In fact, they helped us get our visas. Our whole team got our visas to go to Kharkiv with the help of Ukrainian Bible Institute, because this was a school in Ukraine that trains ministers that partnered with Sunset, and we were graduates of Sunset. And so they helped us get our visas. And so in return, we said, if you'd like us to help teach any classes, we're here. And so in 2010, I taught a class at UBI. I was a guest teacher. I was just there for, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, teaching one course. Very interesting, very fun. I enjoyed that a lot. And then this is what my family looked like the first time we set foot in this building. And I'm skipping a lot of details for time's sake. We were back in the United States to have Ezra, and that's Ezra on Denise's lap. In fact, I think Christy Carr took this picture, didn't you? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We came here raising support because we had lost a bunch of our support after a couple of years, and we needed to find some new supporting churches. And boy, it's a long story. It's hard to skip it. But the Lord brought us into contact with Philip Camp. Philip said, why don't you come on out and give a presentation at Shallowater? This was 2011, and Shallowater became our overseeing congregation that year. So then we had this partnership with Shallowater, and the missions deacon was Philip Camp, who was and is the director of the LCU choir, which made trips over to Ukraine, at least at that time, was making trips to Ukraine periodically. And so we returned to Kharkiv and continued our work and worked together with Philip to bring the choir to Kharkiv, to our city. So 2013, Philip brought the choir. So I'm just pointing this out because it's kind of cool how Shallowater was intersecting with our work. And in fact, I just met like a week ago. I don't know if they're here, but the Jackson's grandson, Trenton, is in this picture somewhere up there on that stage. Trenton Jackson just introduced himself to us a week ago and said, the first thing he said was, I think I was in your apartment in Ukraine. Like, what? So they gave a concert here at this big concert hall that we helped organize at an orphanage. That's them singing at the orphanage there outside of the city. And they sang in our apartment. That's our apartment. And I don't know if Trenton's in that picture or not, but somewhere in that room. So that's very cool. So as I said, that was 2008 to 2014. We didn't initially plan to leave necessarily in 2014, but that's the year that the war started. It didn't start in 2022 between Russia and Ukraine. It started in 2014. That year, we happened to be back in the United States again to have Eden. She was born here. And while we were here, Russia invaded Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula. And then within months, they started invading eastern Ukraine. And so it started looking like this. And for time's sake, I didn't draw all the different shapes that it took in those months of 2014. But it started creeping closer and closer to Kharkiv, where we were living and working at the time, even though we were here. And it became very doubtful whether it was a good idea for us to go back in that situation. And so we were here kind of in limbo for quite a while. And some of you who were here at that time remember that. Eventually, we decided to go ahead and transition out and find our next mission work in a more safe and stable place. And that became, hold on, I'm skipping something. That arrow is showing that, I told you that UBI was in Donetsk. And you can see on that map, Donetsk became occupied by Russian forces. So UBI relocated 2014 to Kyiv, the capital. So that's what that arrow is showing. So starting in 2015, UBI was functioning in Kyiv. Meanwhile, our family relocated to Reno, Nevada, and started doing mission work there, working with a church plant in Reno. And so here's where that's located. I think that's probably more common knowledge. Where's Nevada? But there it is, just in case. And we worked there for 7 years. I won't go into all that for time's sake, but during that time, we were remaining connected with Ukraine. That was still really a lot of where our heart was. And so we would go back to visit every couple of years. So 2016, we went back and visited. This is pictures from that trip. This is our the congregation that we helped to plant and that we're now going back to encourage them, spend time with the leaders and other families there. That was 2016. Cephas was a baby at that time. No, Asa was a baby at that time. Cephas was not yet. Then we went back in 2018. This is the 2018 trip. This is when Cephas was a baby, and spent more time with the brothers and sisters there. The church was doing well with all the fighting in eastern Ukraine. Kharkiv remaining thankfully stable. It never did get occupied by the Russian forces. Kharkiv and our congregation became a hub of refugee ministry, and actually grew quite a lot during those years. Now, on that 2018 trip, we went and visited Kyiv and actually visited Ukrainian Bible Institute. Again, not knowing that this would factor into our future at all. Just thinking, hey, here's a friend of ours, Jadon Rogers. He was the president of UBI at that time. And we got to see their facility there in Kyiv, in this huge building, which I'll show you a picture of later. And that was 2018. Now, we plan to go back every 2 years, as I mentioned. So we plan to go back in 2020 Something happened in 2020. What was it? Anyway, it didn't work out in 2020. So then we thought, oh, well, we'll go back in 2022, maybe after all the COVID stuff settles down. And then something happened in 2022, something more unique, more personal to Ukraine. And that is that Russia launched their full-scale invasion in February of 2022. We were still living in Reno at that time, although we were already starting to look for where would we work next. And then this happened in Ukraine. And, it happened very fast. This is what it looked like as of the end of March, within about 5 weeks of Russia's full-scale invasion. This is what the map looked like. All those reddish pink areas are the Russian occupied areas. And that map is very detailed. It's hard to see, but there's Kharkiv. I mean, the Russians were right up to the outskirts of Kharkiv. They actually entered Kharkiv, but kept getting beaten back, thankfully. And Kyiv, same thing. They went right up to the edge of Kyiv and tried to enter, got beaten back. Neither of those cities fell, thank God, but they both came very close. It was very precarious in those first weeks. But a few months into that, as we were watching and waiting and praying for all of this and staying involved and constantly communicating with our brothers and sisters, our friends in Ukraine, we had this breath of fresh air come into town. This was the Shallowater youth group, came for their mission trip that year. Some familiar faces in this picture. They came in June of 2022. At that time, we were already in the middle of figuring out where we were going to go next. We were beginning to transition out because we had received an invitation to come work full-time with Ukrainian Bible Institute. Our work with Ukraine had already re-intensified because of the war. Starting with the second week of the Russian invasion in March of 2022, I had started getting directly involved with pairing American donors' aid with Ukrainian needs through the context that I had and the ability I had to communicate in the language over there. And so I was working in humanitarian stuff for those first months. And then we got this invitation from Ukrainian Bible Institute to come work full-time. Now, by this time, Jadon Rogers, who I just showed you a picture of a few minutes ago, he had already left and come back to the U.S. UBI is now being led by Brandon Price. He's the president. He and his wife Katie were one of the families on our mission team back in Kharkiv at the beginning. They had stayed on in Ukraine, and eventually Brandon had been invited to become the president of UBI. And then it was Brandon who said, wow, everything's changing during the war. UBI had to go fully online, had to go fully decentralized because so many students and staff had to leave Kyiv. It could no longer be an in-person program where everybody comes to the building and classroom every day because of the dangers. And Brandon said, we need somebody like you to come help us, get through this transition and figure out what UBI is going to be next. And so that became our new work from 2022 to now, working with Ukrainian Bible Institute. Now, because of the war, for the first, for this whole time, we have not lived in Ukraine as we worked with UBI. We did this work from Slovakia. And so here's the map with Slovakia marked. We were in eastern Slovakia, a city called Košice, is where that yellow circle is. Now, this church also supports the Holomicheks. And where are they? Aren't they in Slovakia? Yeah. So there's them. Whoops. They're over on the west of Slovakia, the very edge, close to Austria, a city called Bratislava. That's the capital. So we were on opposite ends of this narrow country, long and narrow country. We actually never saw each other in Slovakia in over 3 years we were there. We saw the Holomicheks in those 3 years in Texas. We never saw each other in Slovakia. So maybe one of these times when we go back to visit, we'll catch them there. So that's where they are. All right, so I want to share some of the main points of our work now that I've caught you up to the present and what we're doing now. What does our work actually consist of? The first thing has been relaunching UBI, as I mentioned. UBI in 2022 could not continue to be what it had been for I don't know how long. UBI started in like 1995, so you do the math. We're actually just entering our 30th year now. This year is going to be our 30th year. So UBI could not continue to be what it had been. It had to be rethought, reinvented, relaunched. And so that's been a big part of what we've done the last few years, rebooting it essentially to meet current and future needs that are completely different from the past. And then also, of course, that involved teaching courses that I'm one of the faculty members. I teach some courses, not the most by any means, but a handful. Then I have this background in building websites and doing online work, which was part of what Brandon needed, which was part of what came for our invitation to come join UBI. And so I've been building and maintaining and developing our online learning platform, which is just the fancy way of saying a special website only for students and faculty to do all this online learning together. UBI website, which is our public-facing online presence. I rebuilt that and launched it last year. And I've shared screenshots of this in the past couple of years, so I'm not going into that this time. And then our humanitarian ministry border trips, which I've shared about some. That's been something we've done periodically, bringing humanitarian aid funds into Ukraine across the border, which was easy to do from Slovakia, just time-consuming, but we could do it. And so that was something we did for those over 3 years in Slovakia. And then last, we were living and working among this Slovak church, the Slovak Christians in Košice, even though they were not directly a part of Ukrainian Bible Institute or the Ukrainian work. And yet we had this opportunity to serve and to encourage them. And they definitely served and encouraged us. They partnered with us to make it possible for us to work from Slovakia. And so that was part of what we did. So what have been the results from these efforts? Well, lots of good things. In the context of heartbreak, in the context of tragedy, of this whole, the whole backdrop of everything I'm talking about, unfortunately, is war. But Jesus told us that's how it was going to be. He said, in this world, you're going to have wars and tribulations, and yet the work goes on. So lots of good things have been going on. So let's look back over the past year specifically in the work. In other words, what do I have new to tell you this time? What's been going on the past year? Well, first of all, we had a bumper crop of new students in our ministry training program. Now, before I go into this, let me say, during this time of war, UBI kind of became two things in one. Before the war, it was always just a ministry training school. Training men and women to be servants of the church, to be teachers of men, women, children, to be, servants and ministers and preachers wives, and, to be equipping the church. During the war, there was so many humanitarian needs, and UBI was like in the perfect position to meet these, having all this base of alumni all over Ukraine. You pick a Church of Christ in Ukraine, there's a better chance than not that its preacher was trained by UBI. So we have this huge network of Ukrainian Christians and churches, and we have all these connections to American donors who partner with UBI. And so starting in 2022, UBI became a big humanitarian ministry as well. So we're now both of those things. And so I'll kind of look at one at a time. So first, the ministry training side of it. We had a big group of new students this past September. After years of having maybe 8, maybe 10 new students per year, last September we had 25, which is one of the things God is doing during this war, is he is stirring up people's lives and showing them that maybe they should do something different. Maybe they should do something for the Lord and his kingdom. And we have a lot of people who want to be trained, who want to be equipped, who want to serve in this time of need. So this is not even everybody. This is just some of the people who were at our opening chapel. We just took a big group photo on Zoom because unfortunately most things are on Zoom during this war. So we had a big group of new students, 25, and they joined our returning students because it's a 2-year program. So we always have our first year and our second year students. for the biggest student body that we've had in a long time. I've only been around, directly involved for a few years, but those who have been involved for a lot longer have said we haven't had this many students since probably 2000 or earlier. The 90s were kind of when it was really big at the beginning, and then it settled down by about 2000. We're kind of almost back to 90s numbers here with what has happened this past year. So here's what instruction looks like. Everybody is on their devices, unfortunately, because nobody's in the same location as each other. That's just the unfortunate reality, but it's also the opportunity we have through the technology that's available to us, that we can continue to teach and discuss and study even from a distance. And so on the left, there's one of our Ukrainian faculty members in Kyiv. In the middle is one of our students in Kyiv. On the right is a married couple who are both students in Dnipro, another city of Ukraine. That's just an example of what it looks like as we're in class. Here's the classes I teach. Specifically, Survey of the Bible is our very first class for our incoming freshman students. And here's a screenshot of what I'm looking at while I'm teaching, just to give you a feeling of what it's like. I've got my notes on the upper left. I've got Zoom on the upper right with all of our students. And at the bottom is my PowerPoint that I'm showing them live. So that was our first class of the year every fall. I teach Christian parenting, Christian finances, comparative religions, which is an upper level course for second year students, and church planting. This picture here is just from a few weeks ago. I just taught church planting last week of May, and this is what it looked like there. Whoops, I just zoomed or something. Scrolled. There we go. So that's what it looks like from my perspective as the teacher. Now, another thing that's newish in our ministry training program is internships. Whereas for 25 plus years, UBI was a program where you came, you learned, you received your diploma, and then you go do whatever you're going to do. Now we have more of a process to give the students some hands-on training as part of their experience with UBI. And so after students finish all the academic portion of the program, they have the opportunity to do a 6-month internship. And these are all pictures from our first batch of internship students. They just finished last fall. And at the moment, we have our second batch of internship students who just graduated and are now doing their internships this year. And so that's been exciting. We've gotten lots of good feedback from both the graduates who are doing the work and the churches where they are serving. Everybody's been very positive about it. So it's been a good addition to the program. All right, now I want to look at the ministry network side, the part of UBI's ministry that is distributing food and other aid and support, ministry support to churches and ministers in Ukraine, because it's a very challenging time to be the church, to be doing ministry in Ukraine during this time of war. So our ministry network grew very quickly. This has all just happened in the past 3.5 years. No, maybe 4 years or so. And this is what it looks like currently. Each of these marks is a partnering congregation that partners with UBI. And the way it works is UBI receives donors funding mostly from the United States, but we've gotten donations from all over the world. And then that comes to UBI. UBI buys, pallets and truckfuls of food. We even import containers on ships full of food. And then UBI, we have a team in Kyiv that processes all that. We have, kind of warehouse space. They kind of get it packaged up and ready to distribute, and it goes to all these different marks on the map. As you can see, mostly around Ukraine, something like between 25 and 30 locations in Ukraine. But also you can see a couple in Poland and one over in the Netherlands. Those are Ukrainian churches in those countries, full of refugees. So what these churches do is they receive this assistance from UBI, and then they distribute it to their communities and to their members. And along the way, they are sharing the gospel. They're not just giving the food to people, they're also talking to the people and serving their spiritual needs. And there have been more baptisms as a result of this than I would even attempt to estimate. It's been very fruitful. So that's a glimpse of what the ministry network looks like. Here's what it looks like in practice. Distribution, these white bags is usually what it looks like as it's being handed from church member to community member, bags full of food and other household items that people can come and get. And that bottom right picture there, see that big box in the foreground of the picture? That is a huge lithium ion battery. Basically, it's an enormous power bank that can power a whole room, a whole church building, even for a good period of time. And this past winter, with all the Russian attacks on the energy grid, all the power outages, all the heat outages that have been taking place, this became a big part of our ministry this past winter, is buying and distributing these power banks to congregations around Ukraine. On the topic of the food, though, if you calculate all the food that's being handed out through this ministry, it comes to over 7,000 meals a day are going to people in need among the Ukrainian churches, communities, and among Ukrainian refugee communities in other countries. Part of this ministry network is also serving the ministers. It's hard to put into words how much I admire the Ukrainian brothers and sisters who are doing this work, who are not hiding, not abandoning the needs that exist, but they're out there sometimes putting their lives in danger to continue to get the gospel of Jesus out and to continue to meet people's needs in their communities. And in that situation, there's a lot of vulnerability to burnout. And we've thought about this a lot in UBI. We don't want to just give them, here's food, go give it to your communities. We want to also minister to these ministers. Many of them are graduates of ours. And so what we've done these last couple of years is a partners retreat. We did it twice a year. Now we're doing it once a year to just put on a retreat and invite all those partners and their families to come and just let us serve you for a few days. And our staff in Kyiv organizes this. And that's a picture from this year's partners retreat there. It's always been very well received, and people are very grateful for that. So that's part of the ministry network as well. All right. What's my role in all this? Because I'm not in Kyiv. I'm not there doing these things. My role has been fairly limited, but it's growing. First has been forming and managing the budget. And let me tell you, I have nothing to show you on the screen about that, unless you want me to show you a bunch of boring spreadsheets or QuickBooks. I mean, QuickBooks, anybody excited about QuickBooks? But this is a big ministry with a lot of donations, a lot of expenses, and that stuff got to be organized. And this is something that I have some interest in doing and some experience. And so I've been involved in forming and managing the budget for this humanitarian ministry network. And the other thing is before we moved here, we were doing those border trips that I mentioned, taking actually humanitarian resources across the border from Slovakia into Ukraine so that they can be used by our staff in Kyiv. I actually have something to show you about these border trips. Not just pictures, but I actually have a video this time, because the last trip that I took before we moved was in January. Went with Brandon Price, our coworker who's in Slovakia still. And Brandon made a video. He's a video guy. I love this. I just let him do it. He made this video for some of our other partners as well. And so I want to show you this video. It's about 3 minutes long from our most recent border trip, just to give you a taste of what we do and what it's like. We are taking a trip across the border into Ukraine from Slovakia, where we live. And this is part of Ukrainian Bible Institute's humanitarian aid ministry, which is a huge part of what the Lord is doing during this time of war.
We live about an hour and 45 minutes from the Ukrainian border. And at the border, we never know how long we're going to spend there. Could just be 30 minutes. It could be hours. And so we can never really plan for that part of it. We are through the border, and that took way longer than we expected.
I'm literally running to try to make it to the bank on time. Rob,
left to meet Natasha, our coworker at the train station. This is not the afternoon we had anticipated. The infrastructure has been hammered in the last week, especially. This has been the hardest winter Ukraine has had since the war began. Thousands of people are without heat and electricity. Just a few days ago, the building that our offices are located in Kyiv were hit with a drone. Thankfully, our offices are okay, but several apartments were destroyed and one person died. And those people now in those apartments have no heat, have no electricity, and have no windows and walls. Several people in the building have no windows because of the blast.
So we finished what we came here to do, which was meet our coworker, Natasha. She came from Kyiv. And these meetings are so important to the ministry that's happening in Ukraine during this terrible time of war, because a lot of good is happening, even in spite of the external circumstances that are so tragic. God's kingdom is here, and God's kingdom is growing here. And a big part of that is equipping the churches that partner with Ukrainian Bible Institute to reach their communities with the gospel. And the more people are hurting, the more they're realizing they have to find help from God and from his people. And they come to the church, they hear the gospel of Jesus. The kingdom has now entered a new home, a new heart, and we have new disciples being made through this work. And it happens just in small ways all over the country through trips like this and all the interactions that are happening with God's people. So I want to mention, because people ask, what about the building, that got hit by a drone? It's an enormous building. This is I got this off Google Street View, something like 21 stories tall and so long. It's this big L-shaped. Our office is that little blue door right in front of you there. That's our office, and everything up above is apartments. And so the part of the building got hit was the other side of the building. And so our UBI office was not directly affected, but unfortunately, residents of the building were, and our staff there in Kyiv were involved in helping them, those whose apartments were affected by that. All right, some other aspects of the past year, besides what I've already mentioned. There's the online learning platform I continue to develop, and maintain from month to month. The UBI website, again, I'm not going to spend time on this, but it's part of what I do. I spoke at the European Vision Workshop in Poland. This is an annual workshop for European church leaders that's organized by Sunset and other partners, Healing Hands International, and some other partners. They do it at a different place in Europe every year. Well, they're doing it in Poland this year. They invited me to speak, and so I gave a presentation about UBI and also gave one of the lessons there. And then just time among the Košice church. As long as we were there, we wanted to encourage and bless these brothers and sisters that we really miss, that have really been good to us and an important part of our lives the past 3.5 years. And so this is some of what that looked like. This is Eden teaching her children's class. She was the kids class teacher. So we had our last kids classes, my lessons that I shared with the church, and then just time with people, time in people's homes, having people into our home, and encouraging and savoring these relationships. We do plan to go back and visit. Lord willing, one day we'll be able to go back and visit both Košice and Kharkiv. May that day come that we can safely do that. But we plan to go back and visit Košice at least. So that's something we've been doing. And then came our move, big blip on the timeline this past year. Just a lot of moving parts to move a family from one continent to another. So we worked on it for months ahead of time, and we're still settling after the move. I'll show you a few pictures of what it looked like. Also, just to, if you haven't already heard, why are the Hindmans here? It's a large part of it is because of our parents as they age, and we feel like we need to be closer to them. We need to see them more often so that we can be there for them and help them as they get older and need more from us. And so Denise's mom is here living with us. You meet her. She was here this morning with us, and so it's good to be here with her, taking care of her, and closer to our other parents if and when the time comes that they need more from us. And so this is some of what it looked like as we moved. We had 3 pallets full of stuff. We did not ship our child. He was sitting on the pallet before it got loaded, but that was a big process. This is what our pallets look like after. They were all loaded with boxes and trunks, and then wrapped and wrapped and wrapped and ready to go onto the truck so they could go onto the ship and make their way over here. Now, our dog, we took this dog with us to Slovakia, and we brought him back home. This is Glacier. Some of you have met him at our house. Glacier made the move more interesting because the airplanes that fly in and out of Košice are not able to handle a dog this big. He's 90 to 100 pounds. Needs a big old kennel, to go onto the airplane. He goes down with the baggage, and so we had to kind of be creative, and we actually booked separately. Denise and the majority of the kids traveled out of Košice, while I and 2 of the kids and the dog drove in this van you see on the left there to Budapest, which is the nearest bigger airport, Budapest, Hungary. And that's Glacier on the right, and the Budapest airport. He's just such a traveler. You can just hang out in the airport. And the rest of us flew out of Budapest, and we all reunited in Dallas, and then drove from Dallas to here like this with our trailer full of all of our baggage, and made it home. And made it to a home that was already here because we had already bought a house sight unseen. All we had seen was videos and photos, but thank you to some of you who helped to get the house situated and even somewhat furnished before we even got here. I know a number of you were involved in that. But the house, nevertheless, still needed a lot of settling, and we're still in the process of that. We've mostly bought all of our groceries now. This is what our first grocery trip to Costco looked like. 2 carts was barely enough. And even now we go to Costco and barely fit in 1 cart sometimes. So we're figuring it out and getting settled as we go. So I want to close with just the most recent developments from just the last few weeks. First, the situation in Ukraine remains very difficult. Everybody is very, very relieved that winter is over. It's warmer. There's light, from early morning to late evening. That makes things a lot easier, although everybody's dreading winter's going to come again, and how are we going to be ready for that? But even though winter is over, the situation has not gotten much easier. The attacks have not really decreased. They've just changed. So, I don't know if you follow the news, but this Oreshnik missile that Russia uses, it's like kind of the huge nuclear capable missile in their arsenal. And they've launched it now twice against Ukraine without a nuclear warhead in it, but just trying to intimidate. And that was just a few weeks ago. This is a map I see these maps almost every day. Every time there's a big night attack, it's always a combination of these drones that Russia got from Iran and these ballistic missiles that they launch. This is a map of everything and where all it hit across Ukraine from May 24th in this case. And I want to share a short video here of one of our students talking about an attack just on June 3rd. So less than 3 weeks ago in Kramatorsk, where one of our students lives. And this is him telling about the attack there and how it affected the church.
Там недавно был прилет, вылетели у нас окна, двери, весь фасад здания, то есть все целое, слава богу, все хорошо. То есть такая мелкая царапина, я могу сказать. Ну, уже заделали, уже в это воскресенье даже у нас собирались люди, хоть их было 18, думаю, Понятно, почему, потому что ракета страшно было. Хотим вот сейчас подвал привести в порядок и в подвале еще собираться.
And so we just continue to pray for our brothers and sisters to be safe, continue to do what they do, and may God shield them and bless their work. I'm glad that nobody was hurt in that congregation there. Recently had our end of year gatherings. We have a big retreat week. We have a retreat for just our students and faculty in Kyiv. And then we have a retreat for all the partners that I've already mentioned. And this is a big group photo from the partners retreat of everybody there. A lot of the people here are also our students. A lot of the people in this picture are graduates working in different places. We had our graduation. This year we had 8 students graduate. These are more pictures from the so that picture on the left there, that is all of our current students and staff who are there for the student retreat. Many students did not come. Even some of our staff, including me, were not there. Many Ukrainians are very hesitant to travel because getting on a train, getting on a bus can be a more dangerous situation because of the drones and stuff. So many students are hesitant to travel. Also, some of the men are hesitant to get out there in public because they may be picked up by a draft officer. So if they'd rather not be enlisted in the army, they're kind of laying low. And so this is who gathered, but it was a very encouraging time. I heard lots of good things. These are our 8 graduates who just graduated this past 2 weeks ago, I guess. And I won't take the time to tell about all of them. Most of them live in Ukraine. One of them lives in Germany. One of them we've known, Denise and I have known for almost the whole time we've been involved in Ukraine. But they range in age from 20s to 60s, and some singles, some married people. You'll see some of them in the video. So the top 4 in this picture were not present at graduation for reasons I've just mentioned. The bottom 4 were at graduation in person. And so these are the 4 of them at our graduation ceremony. And I have a video here to let you hear from some of our graduates. And this will be about the last thing I have to show you.
За время учебы в УБИ я осознал, что стал совсем другим человеком. Восприйняття мира моє змінилось.
Для мене навчання в УБІ – це благословення, тому що дійсно я дуже багато що відкрила для себе. Я багато чула про Господа, я багато знала, але в мене було жага по Слову Божому, і я хотіла навчитися і зрозуміти те все, що Господь відкриває в Слові Божому.
Я начал замечать такие детали, когда я сам дома читал Писание, я их не замечал. Но когда пришел в институт, мне наши преподаватели, которые, например, и американские, и наши вот в Украине, мой кругозор вот так вот расширился, потому что мы тоже знаем, да, когда читаем Библию, ты каждый день ее читаешь, и каждый день что-то новое узнаешь. То есть, и вот эти вот как раз-таки вот эти детали, которые я не замечал, они как раз-таки помогают еще лучше понять мне, как Писание правильно трактуется и так далее, и что я неправильно всегда делаю.
Когда я пришла в УБИ, я вообще думала, что у меня не получится, что стихи я не смогу учить. И меня удивило то, что с каждым разом, когда я только учила стихи, и у меня все получалось.
Більш глибші стосунки з Богом за рахунок молитви, тому що уроки по духовному формуванню.
Я багато дізналася істин і всього, що мене дійсно збудувало як особистість і як жінку.
Я могу людям отвечать на вопросы, которые задают мне. В моем служении, я служу в тюремном служении, люди, которые вообще не знают Христа. И я стала правильно и четко строить свои доклады. Я научилась со своим духовным состоянием работать, и я учу других людей точно так же работать со своим духовным состоянием и укреплять свой дух.
А коли вже я закінчила УБІ, я більш впевнено почала розповідати, більш впевнено доносити це.
Те знания, которые нам преподносили преподаватели наши по всем курсам, мы все применяем сейчас в своем служении.
Мене здивувало те, що тут люди постійно підбадьорювали і говорили, що у вас все вийде, не хвилюйтесь, ви не перші, якщо у вас щось не виходить, звертайтесь. Тобто, ну, не так, як в звичайних навчальних закладах, да, ти сам тягнешся, якщо щось не вийшло, тебе можуть відрахувати, так, а тут навпаки тебе підтримують. Мені здається, люди в ОБІ більше вірили в мене, чим я сама в себе.
Інколи було важко, але слава Богу, у нас все вийшло це зробити, ми живі. Не знаю.
Всем огромное спасибо, и пусть их Господь благословит. А мы постараемся быть достойными преемниками.
Ми б також хотіли в свій час взяти ось зараз після навчання цю естафету, нести її, передавати іншим, запалювати людей, так як в свій час запалили нас.
Спонсори просто закладають величезну допомогу, і щоб розвивалися майбутні служителі.
Я хочу поблагодарить от всей души наших спонсоров и сказать, что если бы не они, то очень много людей не смогли бы познать Бога.
Тому я висловлюю щиру подяку усім братам і сестрам, усім громадам, котрі приймають у цьому участь. Нехай Бог вас благословить.
Я бы хотел выразить огромную благодарность от всех нас, студентов, которые учились, которые учат и будут учиться. Вы делаете колоссальную, важную работу.
Спасибо вам большое, что вы нам помогаете и тем самым служите и делаете очень большое дело.
Я даже не могу выразить словами, потому что это меня переполняют чувства благодарности к Богу за то, что есть такие люди, благодаря которым мы знаем Слово, благодаря которым мы можем идти дальше, возрастать и способствовать спасению тех, которые еще нуждаются в этом.
Я надеюсь, что я когда-нибудь выучу английский еще чуть-чуть лучше, да, чтобы я с вами разговаривать мог, и я к вам приеду в Америку и увижу, кто же эти люди, какое их лицо, как они выглядят. То есть я очень вам благодарен за это. Спасибо, что вы таким примером для нас служите.
So I'll join them in saying thank you to you for your partnership in this work, for your partnership with our family so that we can be a part of what God is doing, UBI. So how's it working with us here? Well, as you may have picked up, most of what I do, I can do from anywhere. Whether it's teaching classes, it's all on Zoom anyway. I just have to get up earlier in the morning to teach, because of 8 time zone difference. And whether it's doing the website, the budget, the learning platform, most of what I do, I can do from here. So that's what we're doing. We're continuing the same work from here so that we can be closer to our family. The only thing I can't do is those border trips, going across the border. And we've already made some adjustments on staff and found other ways, without us and our family there to be able to help get those resources across the border. And got that, so far it's working okay. And in the meantime, I'm here in the U.S. where I am positioned to potentially go visit other churches that partner with UBI or are considering partnering with UBI to be able to be an in-person presence and give a presentation, maybe kind of like this one, and help get the word out about UBI too. So there's pluses and minuses. We miss Slovakia a lot, so be patient with us if it doesn't always seem like we're super thrilled to be here, because we love Slovakia. We love our Slovak brothers and sisters. We love being close to Ukraine. And so there's a part of us that's having a hard time with that. But we're also really appreciative of each of you and our opportunity to spend time with you and have you in our homes and be in your homes and worship together week in and week out with you. So thank God for that as well. We're entering our 30th year of ministry at UBI, praying for great things, looking forward to what God will do next. So thank you for your part in it. And before we finish, I just want to offer an invitation. If anyone needs to become a Christian, if you're not yet following Jesus and you realize you need to, this church is here to help you with that. Or if you have a different need to bring before the congregation, I invite you to come forward as we stand and sing.